but I'm doing my best. So we have a great program today. We like to think we always have great programs, but today we have a really wonderful musician, the Mighty Orq. You're going to want to get up on your feet and dance, and a lot of people do that. So, and then we have Jenni Gillespie, who's going to give us a talk that she actually previewed on a Viking cruise. So we're really lucky. We didn't have to pay for a cruise to get her talk. So that's our program for today. I want to let's go on and get going because I think we're probably going to have a lot to ask Jenni. We want to have plenty of time for questions, and we also want to give the Mighty Orq his due for his music. So the Mighty Orq.
If I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean. Me upon my pony on my boat. If I were Roy Rogers, I'd sure enough be single. Bring myself to Marion Odell. It'd just be me and Trigger. We'd go riding through their movies. We'd ride boating on the sea we'd sail. If I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean. Me upon my pony on my boat. Now the mystery masked man was smart. He got himself a Tonto. His Tonto did the dirty work for free. But Tonto, he was smarter. And one day said, Kemosabe, kiss my soundboard a boat. Going out to sea. Well, if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean. Me on my pony, on my boat. If I were like a lightning, I wouldn't need no sneakers. I'd come and go whenever I would please. scare them by the shade tree, and I'd scare them by the light pole, but I would not scare my pony on my boat out on the sea. Well, if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. If I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat, and we could all together go out on the ocean, me upon my pony on my boat, me upon my pony on my boat. All right, thank you so much, y'all. Good to see you, good to be here. I'm gonna be awake eventually. Do one by the great Guy Clark. This is called Baton Rouge. Nobody actually knows what this song is about, but or what the words Baton Rouge mean. Anyhow, I digress. So I believe what the British would call dry humor. I'm gonna leave Texarkana, I'm going down to Louisiana, gonna try my luck in Baton Rouge. I'm gonna follow Red River down till I see the lights in town, and I ain't gonna get no sleep till Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, gonna get me some alligator shoes. Baton Rouge, gonna wear out in Baton Rouge. That's what. It was a Texas girl broke my heart. Then she tore my truck apart, and I guess I'll get me another in Baton Rouge. Well, I like crawfish, I like rice, I like folks that treat you nice, and I'm gonna find me some in Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, gonna get me some alligator shoes. Baton Rouge, gonna wear out in Baton Rouge. I'm gonna learn to walk that walking, I'm gonna learn to talk that talking, I'm gonna learn to dance in Baton Rouge. It ain't life just like a cul-de-sac, I'm a Texas boy and I'm going back just as soon as I catch my breath in Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, gonna get me some alligator shoes. Baton Rouge, gonna wear out in Baton Rouge. I'm gonna strut my stuff in Baton Rouge. I'm gonna cool my heels in Baton Rouge. Aye.
So I could have been going around and just counting all the folks who were tapping their feet. Thank you. So Jenni Gillespie has been a well-known member of our community. She's given some really great talks. The last one gave us all a new appreciation for seaweed. She's been an environmental educator for 25 years, and then now that she has retired, she continues to educate about the environment. She goes to national parks and helps with education there and conservation, and she also does the aforementioned cruises. So we are very excited to have Jenni come and talk to us about the Caribbean, I think. Yes, yes. Island rainforest. We're going to learn a lot. Thanks.
Okay, you probably could take a 10-minute break while I get this set up. Oh, we're good, we're good. Okay. Good morning. I'm Jenni, and I am going to take you on, oh my God. A tour of Caribbean Rainforest. And in order to do that and show kind of how they exemplify some of the characteristics that we associate with rainforests, we're going to look first at rainforest definitions and typical characteristics, go through some plant adaptations that we find and some animal adaptations, and then take a tour from top to bottom of rainforests from the emergent, canopy, understory, and floor, and use some of the animals in the Caribbean rainforest as examples of some of the adaptations that we review in the beginning. So hopefully this will help make it a little bit clearer. So tropical rainforests, as opposed to temperate rainforests, which is the other main group, are some of the most biologically diverse environments on the planet. They span the equator in a band between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, those imaginary lines that mark the farthest north and south that the sun is seen directly overhead as the Earth orbits. Whoop, sorry. I went a little bit fast there. There we go. All right, sorry about that. The Caribbean islands obviously lie within this zone, and even though each island is relatively small compared to other rainforests, they each show very high levels of biodiversity, and two are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the Morne-Trois Piton National Park in Dominica and the Blue and Crow Mountains in Jamaica. El Yunque National Park is the only tropical rainforest national park in the U.S. system. Okay, tropical rainforest, jungle, as we used to call them. The images that come to mind are very often accurate. A dense forest with a canopy that nearly blocks out the sun, lianas draping the branches that are covered with epiphytes, exotic animals stalking the forest floor, climbing among the branches or soaring through the treetops, and rain, lots of rain. Sometimes more than 80 inches, sometimes as much as 400 inches a year. Although they only cover 6 to 7% of the land surface, tropical rainforests probably have between 40 and 75% of all the species on Earth. There are actually about half a dozen definitions of rainforests that differ from country and region. Some define it based on the total amount of rain over the course of the year. A commonly cited threshold is 2,000 millimeters, or about 80 inches. Some might be adjusted based on local climatic conditions. In other regions, it's not the total amount of rainforest, but how it's distributed. It's a wet and dry season, as opposed to 4 seasons or rain scattered throughout the year. And some, it's the structure of the vegetation that goes into the definition. Some areas require certain species of trees, especially to be in that forest to count it as a rainforest. Some look at it as what are the layers of growth. In some areas, indigenous population definitions are used, which are often based on usage traditional usage of the rainforest rather than some of the more usual scientific criteria like amount of rainforest structure, etc. But no matter what the definition, all these tropical rainforests do have certain things in common. Lots of rain. That commonly cited 2,000 millimeter minimum of 80 inches is frequently and pretty universally acceptable. Dense layers of vegetation, including a lush understory, a canopy that covers a good amount of the sun, constant humidity, warm temperatures throughout the year, nutrient-poor soil, partly from rapid reabsorption by living plants and leaching of minerals with the rainfall, and high biodiversity of both plants and animals, which leads to a saying that rare is common and common is rare. For example, a typical temperate forest will have between 5 and 20 species of trees per acre. A boreal forest usually less than 5. A typical tropical rainforest can have between 40 and 100 species of trees in an acre. So the number of individual trees of one species is going to be limited. So rare, only a few species at a time, a few individuals of a species at a time is common, and having a lot of one species of tree is rare, and that can spill over into other plant forms and animal life. And this puts pressure on the plants to be efficient pollinators. So most of the flowering trees who thrive in the rainforest partner frequently with insects, occasionally with other animals, to use them as pollinators. We think of the animal as being the active one here, but if you can use an animal to transport your pollen, you don't have to do it yourself. And if they can partner with a specific insect rather than a generalist like the European honeybee, they have a better chance of getting their partner flowers, partner trees pollinated. And the same occurs with distribution of seeds. These flowering plants make fruits, and that if the fruit falls, it provides the seed with more food than other tree species, which we'll look at in a minute, and potentially being eaten by an animal who will then walk away or fly away and drop those seeds, which don't get digested, in a new place. Another tactic that these plants use in rainforests, especially the trees, is to all of the same species flower at the same time, frequently within 24 to 72 hours. All of those trees will flower at the same time, so any pollinator that's around has all of those flowers available simultaneously rather than sporadically throughout the year. Tropical rainforests are dominated by these flowering plants, angiosperms. They emerged about 145 to 130 million years ago and soon replaced the gymnosperms, which were the dominant plant form, because of advantages they had. So the name angiosperm comes from the Greek angion, which means a container. And these plants have a flower, which then, when pollinated, creates a fruit, which holds the seeds. The gymnosperms, conifers being the most diverse, also ginkgos and cycads, make a cone, which holds the ova, and if it gets pollinated by the wind, and we all know those, especially those of us who are sensitive to pollen, that wind-blown pollen, you have to make a lot. The trees make lots and lots and lots of pollen because there's no control over the wind. It may blow to a neighboring tree, it may not. So Gymnosperms, the bear seeds, use the wind to pollinate and frequently to distribute the seeds. Lots of our conifer seeds have a wing or two on them, and they'll blow at least a ways. But the angiosperms have a flower, and only after the seed is pollinated does the flower turn into a fruit. So the plant does not put in that extra energy to create the fruit unless the seed is already formed. And in addition, they can use the animals to distribute them. So those were some of the advantages. And it turns out that the rise and diversification of angiosperms coincided with a big diversification of insects. And so many of these flowering plants, orchids are some of the most famous, co-evolved with insects. And so they partner with this one species of insect to provide it with nectar or pollen to eat while gaining in return pollination and sometimes seed dispersal. The benefit of or this proliferation of these rainforests may also have benefited from the demise of dinosaurs, who, the bigger ones like elephants, trample the area they live in, keeping a more open landscape. Whereas without the dinosaurs, these dense forests were able to form. Okay. The rainforest in Borneo may be the oldest rainforest in the world, dating back 130 to 140 million years, soon after the evolution and emergence of flowering plants. It now has 15,000 species of plants and an equal number of species of insect. Over 200 species of mammals that live in that forest, and 400 types of birds. The youngest is the Congo, which emerged only 10 to 18,000 years ago, which coincided with a shift in the southern African monsoon, which was triggered by a change in the angle of the axis of the Earth, which is one of the Milankovitch cycles, which is a whole nother talk. So anyway, it's the youngest. The Caribbean ones are kind of middle-aged. They date back 25 to 30 million years. Most Caribbean rainforests are on the inland interior mountains of the islands. And these areas generally in the Caribbean receive between 120 and 200 inches of rain every year, 3,000 to 5,000 millimeters, compared to less than half of that on the coast, 30 to 60 inches, 750 to 1,500 millimeters. The plants and animals, I did it again, sorry about that. Getting ahead of myself. Let's go here, yeah, all right. The plants and animals that live in the rainforest have to have special adaptations to the warmth, the humidity, the rainfall, and the diversity, the large number of species of both plants and animals, and competition and predation. So we'll look at plants first. A lot of plants, especially the trees, have these drip tips, these elongated points on the end, which facilitate water running off and keep the leaves from staying wet and potentially being infected or infested by fungi or bacteria or other parasites. A lot of the trees have buttress roots for stability. Most rainforest plants have very shallow roots. The nutrients are right at the top of the soil from recently decomposed plants and animals. And if the trees don't soak it up quickly, it can get leached away by the rains. So they don't bother making deep roots, which leaves them vulnerable sometimes to being blown over, but in the main, is the most effective way for them to get the nutrients they need. In addition, these trees generally have very thin bark because it doesn't need to protect the tree against water loss. All that humidity relieves the tree of that responsibility, the bark of that responsibility, and it allows for better exchange of gases. Everybody needs light, and the closed canopy, which sometimes covers 90% of the sky, can make it hard for smaller plants like mosses and bryophytes, which have no vascular system, so they can just move water by osmosis. How do they get light? They grow on the branches and the trunks of trees up high, 70, 80, 100 feet high, and do their photosynthesis there using the tree as their substrate. Most of these plants are not parasitic. They don't invade the tree. They don't rob it of nutrients. They just use it as their base. And unlike a couple of plants that are famous, like strangler figs, they don't overrun the tree and end up killing it. And some even create their own micro habitats. So bromeliads are one that we're familiar with sometimes from container plants. They are vascular plants. They grow on the branches of trees. And as you may be able to see here in the center, they have kind of a cup-like structure, so they hold water. And that can create a little microhabitat for insects that have waterborne larvae, or various species of frogs that lay eggs in these little areas, and the tadpoles live there isolated and relatively safe from predators. Another big adaptation of rainforest plants are toxins. They have to protect themselves from being eaten. So one way to do that is to taste terrible. And frequently, they will communicate with each other with pheromones, with chemical communication, so that when one plant is eaten or attacked, it will send out communication, which can get two other plants of the same species, and they can start producing toxins. That's less of a problem here because they're spread out, so insects or other leaf-eating animals are not going to jump as easily from one plant to another. But these toxins have also been of a benefit to us. The rainforest is sometimes called the world's biggest pharmacy because more than a quarter of all of our medicines come from rainforest plants, or were first discovered there, like quinine, the first modern effective treatment for malaria, pilocarpine, which from the jaborandi tree, which is used to treat glaucoma and dry mouth in people who are going through radiation therapy for head and neck cancers. Curare, which is used by many indigenous tribes in the Amazon as a poison to put on their darts for hunting, but is also used as a muscle relaxant during surgery. In the Caribbean, we get an increased variety because every island has its own endemics. So, for example, in Puerto Rico, two of the endemics are the tabonoco and the Puerto Rican royal palm. And these two trees, which are very similar looking, the way they grow, they don't grow in the same places. So one of these adjustments that plants and animals make not to compete with each other is to not be near each other. So the tabonoco tree tends to grow at lower elevations. Local people used it for its hard wood, and it's very resinous, so they would use the resin to make torches. The Puerto Rican royal palm tends to grow at higher elevations. Lots of birds and bees and bats nest in it, and people would use the fronds for thatching their houses. So keeping separate, in addition to being separated by expanses is one adaptation. Moving on to animals, animals have to adapt too. In addition to adapting to humidity and rain, which a lot of animals do with weatherproofing, most rainforest birds, for example, have more oil glands than birds in temperate or boreal areas. Adaptations like camouflage, which we have here. I especially invite you to notice the spider, which is going after the bee on the yellow flower. He's probably the hardest to see. Where an animal blends in, or mimicry, where one species will imitate another more dangerous one that either has venom or poison or other toxins to defend itself. And just a note for my use, poisons are when you eat it and it bothers you, and venoms are when the animal or plant basically injects it into you. Okay. So let's start at the top, the emergent layer. These are scattered trees. It looks more dense here than it really is, that stick up above the canopy. The canopy is like the ceiling, and these are like the occasional chimneys that stick up above the canopy. They can be more than 200 feet tall, or though most are less than that. Maybe 45 to 55 meters in the 140 to 180 foot range. The trees that stick out of the canopy and that very top layer of the canopy have to be able to handle intense sun, high winds, and hot temperatures. But the benefit of that is lots of flowers and resulting fruit, which means lots of birds and butterflies and other fruit, flower, and seed eaters. So 2 examples from the Caribbean are the Jamaican giant swallowtail and the Julia butterfly, which we're going to look into a little more detail. The Julia butterfly adult, that lovely black and orange, pretty much get nectar from any flower. But like the monarch, they are very specific in where they lay their eggs and what the caterpillars eat. And in this instance, it's passion flower leaves. And for the same reason that monarchs use milkweed. The passion flower has toxins which the caterpillars ingest, and they persist into the adult, which makes them taste bad or cause, they don't usually kill anything, but cause distress to an animal that eats it. They have another adaptation, which is very cool, is that the males drink turtle tears. They will land on the turtles' faces and deliberately irritate the eyes to cause them to tear up, and they will drink the tears because they contain a lot of sodium and other minerals that the males need in order to procreate. So it's another making use of your neighbors. All right. Another cool bird, an animal, this time a bird that lives in this emergent and upper canopy, is the Antillean euphonia. It's also a fruit eater. It lives in the upper levels. And one of the reasons it's called Euphonia musica, hopefully will start by itself. Okay. And a last, let's go. There we go. All right. One last bird from this area is the scaly-naped pigeon, another frugivore who also eats berries and occasionally seeds. And all of these fruit eaters participate in helping to rejuvenate the forest or reseed it where it's been cut down as they fly around and the seeds pass through their digestive system. And where you have herbivores, you get carnivores. Here in the upper canopy, it's primarily birds. One is the red-tailed hawk, same species that we have here. They have resident populations and sometimes migrants who come in. These birds don't nest in the emergent layer, but they go there to hunt. They'll frequently perch on the high trees because it gives them this spectacular view. On the other hand, the broad-winged hawk, also the same species that we have here in the States, does nest up in the very high emergent trees, as well as hunting here. Taking one step down, we get to the canopy. And this is the roof of the rainforest. We have these few emergents, but this is the main layer. This absorbs 90% of the sunshine, so only about 10% goes through the canopy. And it's not just like a thin layer. What's considered the canopy is frequently 20 to 50 feet thick, where you have all of the leaves and the flowers and the fruits and the butterflies and birds that eat them. So, and this is what creates that darkened understory and forest floor. So one of the iconic birds that we think of with tropical rainforest are the Amazons or parrots. And in the Caribbean, there are a number of endemic species. So you have this basic parrot design, but each island or species is somewhat different. So we have the St. Vincent and the St. Lucia that look, you can tell the different colors. And for example, the Puerto Rican Amazon, which is coming back from near extinction in the 70s. They all have that lovely bright green color, but as you see here in this picture on the left, that's a lot of very similar color to all of the leaves. And even these bright flashes of red or blue or yellow can closely match the color of the flowers. So as they're flitting around in the canopy, they match the colors that they're in and are well camouflaged. On the other end, another type of bird that has a lot of endemic species is the toadies. And they are insectivores rather than fruit or seed eaters. And the Caribbean islands have no fewer than 5 endemics of these. Again, by island. Hispaniola boasts 2, the broad-billed and the narrow-billed. And they are a really good example of how closely related species kind of have separated themselves so they don't compete with each other. They're both about 4 inches long. They look very similar. And they're both insectivores. The broad-billed toady tends to forage in the understory and on the forest floor. They occasionally catch things in midair, but they're more likely to pick up insects off the ground. The narrow-billed toady lives in the upper part of the understory and the canopy, and it acts more like the flycatchers we see, where it will take off from a perch and catch an insect and come back and take off and catch this. They call it sallying. They sally forth and catch something and return. And then there's the Jamaican and the Cuban, which is called Totus multicolor, as you can see, and the Puerto Rican. They're lovely and colorful, 4 inches long, head to tail. And if you ever get a chance to see them flitting around the rainforest, it's very cool. But since, we'll see if we can give you a quick view. And they will tend to sit like this for long periods of time, and you find them by listening and then try to see them poking through the branches, peeking through the branches. And that's them. But everything is not bright and colorful. The canopy also hosts bats. and all sorts of bats. So there's insectivores, as you would expect, who help control the populations and use echolocation to catch insects. And there's frugivores, like this Jamaican fruit bat, who eat a lot of fruits, and they are one of the crucial animals in regenerating rainforest. They tend to fly more over open areas, so if there's a clear-cut area, you're more likely to find bats flying over it, sometimes looking from one area to another for fruit and seeds to eat. And there's even one, the greater bulldog bat, that eats fish. It's a fishing bat, and it's widespread. It's since they can fly fair distances. But look at their feet as hopefully this video goes. We'll see.
One of the largest bats in Costa Rica is one of the most easily seen. The greater fishing bat forages along calm waters of rivers, estuaries, and the sea. Rarely it can be found grabbing fish alongside of pelicans late in the day. But not today. They tend to forage in groups, and with their highly modified feet, they snag small fish as they come to the water's surface. Their echolocation detects ripples at the water's surface. Fish, like this freshwater sardine, are common prey. Greater fishing bats tend to feed on insects in the wet season and then switch to fish in the dry season. Sometimes they miss their target. But this beetle didn't get a second chance, nor did this mayfly. Only through slow motion film can you appreciate their tremendous ability to catch these small insects. Their flight is actually slow by bat standards. One of the largest bats in Costa Rica is one of the most easily.
Move on. They are fun to watch. Okay, the Pallas long-tongued bats. So we have the insectivores, the frugivores, the fishing bats, and the nectar-eating bats. And this long tongue, this again is a bat that's widespread throughout the Caribbean, is for getting nectar. They feed at night. So most of the flowers that they feed on are pale colored and large, so they can stick their whole face in, get the nectar with their long tongue, pick up pollen, and then move on to the next. So flowers that use the bats are big, pale, bloom at night, and that coordinates with the bats. So there's lots of partnering in the rainforest. And this brings us down to the understory, between the canopy and the forest floor. Vertically, this is the largest stretch because many of the branches on the trees in the rainforest don't start till 70 or 80 feet high. So this is a huge area. Some flowers, occasional fruit or nuts, but mostly leaves. So all of your leaf-eating insects or leaf-eating other animals are going to be found here. And where you have insects, you get insectivores. In Puerto Rico, one of the indigenous ones is the elfin wood warbler. Not called elfin because it's so small, although it's only 5 inches. In Spanish, it's called Reinita de Bosque, the little queen of the woods. And it was only discovered in 1968 by Western scientists. And that's a testament, I think, to how much more might still be available to be discovered. Its genus name, Setophaga, from the Greek for moth-eating, reference to its insectivorous lifestyle. And Angelae comes from Angela Kepler, who was one of the team of discoverers. So if you discover a new species, you may get your name attached to it. They're small, black and white, and sometimes can be confused with a black and white warbler who does migrate there in the winter, but does not stay in the spring to breed. It breeds in North America. But you can see the similarities. And of course, 5 minutes? Okay. Where you have herbivores, you have carnivores, and one of the interesting ones to me is the Puerto Rican sharp-shinned hawk, which feeds in the understory, going in and out of the trees, mostly catching other birds. All right, which brings us down to the forest floor. We're getting close. At the bottom of the rainforest is the forest floor, and plants here have to be very well adapted to very low light because you're talking 2% of the original sunlight. Frequently, the forest floor is bare because it's so nutrient poor, there's so little light, and so few nutrients. While the plant life is lush, as I mentioned before, the soil is nutrient poor, which is one of the reasons why people who cut down the trees for agriculture frequently don't do well after a couple of years. And indigenous tribes who did agriculture would move every 3 to 5 years. So a lot of these islands have indigenous snakes, including boas, non-venomous snakes. These are kind of the top predator of the forest floor, frequently eating lizards of various kinds like anoles and ground lizards, but the grown ones also eat about 60% mammals, and half of that are invasive species of mice and rats, so they actually act as controls. I was going to show you this, but I don't think we have time, but this is my iconic insect of the rainforest, the leafcutter ants, which are in New World forest. If you notice that curved edge, the way the ants cut the leaf is they hook their back legs on one edge and they rotate their body around while they cut the leaves, and they take them back to their nest where they chew them up and they mix them with their saliva or the equivalent thereof and their feces sometimes to grow a particular fungus, which is what they eat. And some scientists think, we are not going to watch this, see if I can get past it, that the reason that they started doing that after the meteor impact of 66 million years ago, because this practice seems to date back about that same amount of time. Some of the birds, there are birds like the one you just saw, the bananaquit and bullfinches, which move a lot between zones. So they may live like the bananaquit nests low in the understory, but feeds up in the canopy. And I just want to finish, for fun, with the coquis. Well known from Puerto Rico, but there are similar related species. There are 17 species in Puerto Rico, and they do that kind of separation where different species are found at different levels, and some even in nests. They range from a ½ inch in diameter to about 3 inches, and this is what they sound like and how they got their name. See if we can't move on. All right. So while all rainforests share general characteristics, each one, and especially separated ones, isolated ones like on the islands, has their own unique features and unique way of manifesting those generalized characteristics. and all are worth investigating and visiting, if only virtually. Thank you. Hopefully I stayed within my 5 minutes.
Birds and bats and snakes. Oh my. Okay, so we're going to have a 5-minute coffee break. So y'all run to the restroom and get your coffee or whatever. We'll be back in 5 minutes. If you want to write down your questions, and please make it a question. We just don't have a lot of time for comments. So if you need to have a question, we'll have plenty of time to do that, but y'all run to the restroom real quick, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. William, do we have a microphone for questions ready? I can yell a question. Okay, so Barun's got the microphone, so just raise your hand and he'll come around and to take your question. And Jenny, here you go.
Okay, so for the plants that all flower simultaneously or pollinate simultaneously, are they communicating based on just what the weather is doing, reading signals there, or are they communicating in some other way, or is
Okay. To
something
be
else?
honest, I don't know. I've read of kind of both with the pheromones, although that seems to me to be harder across the distances you have. So my understanding is that it's more connected to like time of year, length of sunlight, that kind of stimulus, rather than the direct communication you might have in a temperate forest where you have more of the same species close together. But that's from what I've read, and I wouldn't claim to be extremely knowledgeable about that.
Would you happen to know if the coqui was eradicated from Hawaii after the invasion? I know they got over there on boats and they were driving the people crazy, and I was wondering if they were able to eradicate them finally.
I don't know. There have been a lot of challenges in Hawaii with species. I know they had brown snakes that came in the wheel wells of airplanes from Guam that they've had problems with, and I don't know specifically about those.
To what age do the trees tend to grow at their maximum? And the second question is, you had pictures of the birds singing, and those birds use camouflage. So singing, I guess, would attract predators. Do they take the risk of attracting predators because they're using their song to attract members of the
Mates.
other sex?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the songs are primarily either to attract mates or establish a territory. And yes, you do have a danger of also, attracting a predator. The smaller birds, like the toadies, tend to like really dense vegetation, which gives them some protection from bigger predators. But yeah, for lots of wildlife, there's always that balance of what I need to do to continue the species and how I don't get killed in the process. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your first question.
How old do the trees grow? How old do the trees grow?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I know you're looking in the 50 to 100 year range, but I don't know of any tropical rainforest trees that are old like the temperate rainforest trees, like the redwoods and the sequoias that can live for thousands of years. I don't know of any rainforest trees that live that long. They're faster growing. All angiosperms are faster growing than the gymnosperms and the conifers especially. And so I don't think they tend to live as long.
Yeah, I was just wondering, are you knowledgeable enough to actually do a talk on the Milankovitch cycles? Because I would like to hear that. And I was also wondering, which one of the cycles in particular has the biggest effect on the climate? Is it the eccentricity of the orbit, the obliquity of the tilt, or the precession of the equinoxes?
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Milankovitch cycles track three variations in the Earth as it orbits. One is the specific angle of the axis, north-south, which ranges between 21.4 and 24.1 degrees. Right now we're at 23 something. But that's a wobble over about a 40,000 year cycle. It's also wobbling like a top, which is why Polaris won't be the North Star in a while, and that's on 60-year cycle, maybe, if somebody knows, tell me. And then there's the shape of the orbit, how elliptical it is. It ranges between 0.00055, so 55 10,000ths off a perfect circle, and 0.067, which is somewhat elongated. And the wobble, so changes where the axis points, and that determines where on the orbit you have summer, fall, winter, and spring, depending on when the North Pole or the South Pole is pointing directly towards the sun or directly away from it, summer and winter. And those three can all influence the amount and distribution of sunlight over the course of a year and can mitigate or intensify the others. So that's the short version of the Milankovitch cycles. Is that what you were asking? Okay, somebody over here had a question. Yes.
Yes, my question, thank you so much for your talk. My question is, you mentioned that the rainforest, like 1/4 of our drugs come from the rainforest.
Yeah.
How do they identify the targets, and who are like the scientists that go there, like botanists or chemists, to identify the targets for drug development?
That have been both, and general explorers in 17th and 18th century. Some of it came from indigenous uses. They noticed that indigenous people used certain plants, you know, like chewing coca leaves when you need endurance and stuff. It led to discovering opium and morphine and things. A lot of that, my understanding is that frequently the shamans or other medical specialists would sometimes watch animals, and they would say, okay, we see a small animal get poked or bitten by something that's toxic, and it runs and eats this plant. And then they will go and test it. And the one I'm familiar with, or a pattern that I've read about, is that so a shaman will pick it up, a plant up, and rub it, and wait a couple of days, touch it to their lips, touch it to their tongue, and every time wait a few days to see if there's a bad reaction. Take a small bite, chew it, spit it out, you know, and then swallow it and build up knowledge about them. So it's that kind of process that helps traditional knowledge build. So a lot of it's based on that, what they see people doing, and then testing it, trying to isolate the active ingredient. But yeah, it would be chemists, botanists, other medical professionals.
It's a great talk, Jenny. Have plummeting worldwide insect populations had any noticeable effect in the rainforest yet?
I don't know. I have not read anything indicating that, but I know it's going on. And there's also a big decline in amphibians. Exactly what that's due to is still debated.
When my family and I moved out, to the house that you knew on Rummel Creek, we had tree frogs on our back patio. We had tree frogs when we moved out in the 80s to Rummel Creek, and they would get on our windows, and they were teeny tiny, and they would put their little suctions up on our windows, and it was amazing. My husband grew bromeliads on that patio, and I don't think I had tried to figure out where the tree frogs were living, but those bromeliads probably caught the water and kept the water and gave them a place. Do you think? I just was trying to visualize that when you were talking.
Tree frogs in general tend to like hang on the bark, the trunk, or the branches, sometimes the leaves, depending on size and stiffness of the leaf. And a lot of them have sticky pads on their feet, like the coquis, to help them hold on, so sort of like suction cups. But is your comment that they've declined?
So far, I didn't have them for recent years, but for several years I did, and I was wondering did they get all the way up to the house area? You know, did they get all the way up to where the house
Yeah.
There are no,
and-
no big trees. The trees are off in the creek, not up by the house.
Yeah.
They
Well,
just jump
whatever,
around.
they find a place that suits them.
Good,
So
okay.
I'm not privy to their thought process.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wow, we got a little, I don't know, what do you call it, an astrophysical talk in there, too. Way to go, Jenny. But note to self, we need to get somebody from Rice or whatever to talk to us about that Mankiewicz cycle thing. So I'm going to do a few announcements right now. First is that lunch is at Tarka Indian today. It's on Shepherd, right across from the Rock and Robin Music Shop, in case some of you are aware of that, on Shepherd, just south of Richmond. The easiest way is to go down Richmond, take a left onto Hazard, and kind of come up the back way, because, of course, Shepherd's a one-way street going the wrong way. We have a volunteer opportunity coming up at the food bank on August 2nd. So you will need to go up and sign up for that. There's a link on Meetup and on the website, on the calendar. So you'll need to go to that and sign up through there. There's a beach day coming up. So after we learned all about the seaweed, got inspired. So there's a beach day coming up on Saturday, July 26th, starting at 10 a.m. It's at Galveston Island State Park. There is a fee, a $5 fee for park entrance. So I think that's also on Meetup, so if you may want to RSVP there for that. And then, of course, our Northeast Houston Kingwood Humble monthly social is August 3rd from 1 to 4, so that's coming up. Let's see, next Sunday will be BYOL, so keep that in mind. So those are the opportunities we have. Also, Susan has a homegrown pineapple that she's going to cut up for us in the kitchen if you want to come see after this. Now, on to business. We have expenses. We have fixed expenses, some expenses not so fixed. So donations are really helpful, no matter how small. Recurring donations are really super helpful because they help us budget and let us know whether we can make our budget or not. So I would encourage y'all to donate. There's a hat at the back where you can put in cash or checks. Tim will be happy to set you up with recurring donations if you want to do that. We do rent the space that we have here. We pay for childcare. We pay for musicians. And so your financial contribution is really appreciated. Let's see. So the last couple of weeks, and Eric wants some see Eric here. If you are a public school parent with kids in the public school, he has some things that he would be interested in talking to you about, having to do with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So the last couple of weeks have been tough. We've had a lot of death in Texas. I went to viewed a funeral recently of one of the little girls who was killed in the flooding in Kerrville. And that has just, I don't know about y'all, but that is just really, all of that has been on my mind. So I just want to put that out there. I know, there's just lots of, we're still kind of taking it all in, how it happened, how can we make sure it doesn't happen again, what were the problems, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just ask you to hold in your heart all those folks who have been impacted by that, because it's going to happen again. We just know that flooding is going to happen again. It'll happen here because it's happened here before, and it'll happen in other parts of the state too, and it's something we need to get a handle on. So anybody else have any concerns? Oh, the book club meets every month on Wednesday. If you go to the calendar, I'm not sure. Let's see, when is the next one? Is it on here? Yeah, it's Wednesday, July 30th. I'm sorry. Thank you, Elaine, for asking about that. From 7 to 9 at the Cafe Express in River Oaks. So, and then the book is there, Abel Sanchez and Other Stories by Miguel de Unamuno. So, any other questions, concerns, celebrations? All righty, we're going to ask the Mighty Orq to take us home.
Well, I met you on the back porch, eating the cat food. You hissed at me and I thought, man, isn't that rude? And later by the trash can, eating the flotsam. Could tell you didn't care if the raccoons got some. You're a nocturnal marsupial, if I'm not mistaken. Just working for a living, trying to bring home the bacon. It's getting kind of late now and I've got to go. But come on back tomorrow, we'll play possum some more. Scurrying and scavenging and rooting around, that's right. Taquache. Bring a bag of cat food and we'll go painting the town, yes. Well, yes, I said, wouldn't that be awesome? I feel like this friendship could blossom. Take all your doubts and toss them up to the man in the moon. Oh, well, I said, wouldn't it be awesome? Being best friends with a possum. You know I'm taking all my doubts, I'm gonna toss them up to the man in the moon. Let me play possum. I am a possum. I am a possum too. Well, let me play possum with you. Thank you.
Here's some variety. A little contemplative slide guitar, and then a Texas bluesy homage to the possum. Go in peace, y'all. See you next week.